Our student involvement number literally quadrupled this year. And then just last month, we saw 100 students say yes to an invitation to follow Jesus. I don't think I've ever witnessed revival, but I feel like maybe I have this year.
This is the story of 100 Greek IV students saying yes to Jesus in one night. And it's also the story of one Greek IV alumna saying yes to Jesus almost 30 years ago. We're taking another short pause before our next long-form series to zoom in on some of the cool work that God is doing through InterVarsity Focus Ministries. And as you've already sorted out, I'm sure, on this episode, we are highlighting Greek InterVarsity. We're joined by Kristin Dalton, a Greek IV alumna from Indiana University, who is also on staff with Greek IV at Indiana University. And she's going to share a story of God's faithfulness that spans decades and how she is still seeing the fruit of her yes as a college senior today. Just a couple notes before we start. This conversation comes from an episode that aired on our other alumni podcast, InterVarsity World Changers. If you'd like to hear the whole story, you can find a link to that in the show notes. Also, because that conversation is so much longer than we have time for here, you'll hear me pop in halfway through to give an abbreviated version of the story that connects Kristin's student experience to her amazing experience this past spring semester on staff. So, with that in mind, welcome to After Four, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. Kristin, welcome.
Thanks, John. It's so good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. I mean, when I heard your story, I was like, this is somebody that I'm pretty excited to talk about. And I'm excited to hear your story. I'm excited that you're an InterVarsity alumna and that you've gotten to partner with God in some really cool ways, not just in the story that you mentioned. I know that there's a lot more to it than just that. But certainly the story that you're going to tell us today, and I'm just excited to hear more about how God's at work in you and in your context. Kristen, as you mentioned in the intro that people have already heard, you're on staff with Greek IV at Indiana University. How long have you been on staff? Give us just a little bit of an idea of what your role is there.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was on staff for 12 years with Greek IV from 1998 to 2010. And now I am back. I just came back on staff last July. So it'll be 1 year in July again. Yes. Okay.
And it has been quite a first year back, it sounds like.
Totally.
And, so, I mean, we'll get into the story in more depth, but like, Kristin, can you just give us a synopsis here of what it is that happened on campus and whether or not this has been a typical experience for you in your staff career?
No, totally not anything that I had ever experienced. My husband, Andy, has been volunteering, and I've also been doing some work with Paul Birch, who's been helping out. He's been on staff for 40 years with InterVarsity.
Yeah, wow.
And all of us are like, no, we have never seen anything like this. God has totally done the Ephesians 3:20 immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine. Our student involvement number literally quadrupled this year. And then just last month, we saw 100 students say yes to an invitation to follow Jesus. So I don't think I've ever witnessed revival, but I feel like maybe I have this year.
Yeah. And what I love is, as we've already mentioned, like this is just one little piece of that much bigger story of revival. And we're gonna get even more snapshots into the bigger story here. But for you, the events leading up to this night started much longer ago than just a year ago when you rejoined staff, or even when you were on staff the first time.
Yep.
Like this goes way back. That God's been working in your heart about reaching Greek students. Can you tell us like where this story kind of started for you?
Yes, totally. You say way back. It really was way back, like back in 1998. So I was actually a college student at IU myself from 1994 to 1998. I came into school what I call churched but clueless, had grown up going to church, but didn't really know what it meant to follow Jesus or have a relationship with him. I got to college, and probably like so many college students, I was just totally thrown out of my comfort zone, asking all the big life questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose in life, joined a sorority to try and make this big campus feel a little smaller. And ironically, it was through my sorority that I found Jesus.
Wow. That's really, yeah. And so then you join the sorority. I would imagine sort of unexpectedly, maybe that's the place where Jesus really like steps in and meets you in a powerful place. Tell us just a little bit about like, what was some of that transformation like for you in that space?
Yeah, totally. So there was a girl in my house, in my sorority house, who was leading a Bible study, and she invited me to come to the Bible study. And I had tried all the other things that college tells you are supposed to be the things you do in your college life, and it just was not fun. And I thought, when she invited me, maybe this is really what I have been looking for. So she invited me to come to the Bible study, but then she also invited me to come to the larger Greek IV organization that had been putting on, kind of sponsoring maybe this Bible study. INTERVARSITY had just started its ministry to Greek students back in the early 90s.
Okay.
So I'm super grateful that I got to be a part of that. Because it was really that ministry, Greek IV, that taught me what it looked like to follow Jesus. And I remember first getting involved in that Bible study, then getting involved with Greek IV. But it was when my staff worker, when I finally got to be discipled, that for the first time ever in my life, someone showed me how to study my Bible. And I remember taking this it was now what I know as an inductive Bible study method back to my sorority house and sitting down in the Delta Gamma study room and opening up my Bible to Romans 4 and just kind of using this outline and really just having this very Holy Spirit inspired moment where I knew that God wanted to know me, that he wanted me to know him, that I could know him through a more careful study of his word. And I was hooked after that. I went on to continue to study chapter by chapter, book by book over the next couple years of my time as a student with Greek IV there.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. I mean, and it sounds like just absolute life transformation.
Totally.
Which being a couple of staff with INTERVARSITY and our alumni listeners, that doesn't sound shocking.
Right.
But at the same time, you just love being reminded of those stories of this is, I grew up knowing about Jesus, but this is where I came to know Jesus. And that happens time and time again with our students. And for many of us as staff, that was our experience as well.
Yep.
But it sounds like it's not, knowing where you are now, that it's not just your life that was transformed by your time with Greek IV, that it was also your vision for broader transformation among Greek students. So tell us a little bit more about that growing vision as well.
Yeah, so I don't think right away I quite had any vision for Greek ministry or reaching Greeks. I remember feeling very, very passionate as I had been discipled, like I told you, that I wanted to be able to do that same thing for other students. But it wasn't really until a couple years later, the summer between my junior and senior year, 1997, I went up to Cedar campus, which sadly is no longer a part of INTERVARSITY, but still very much a huge part of my story. And there was an undergrad staff there. I still don't even remember who that undergrad staff was. But he knew I was Greek, and we just had this conversation at dinner where he said, "Hey, would you be interested ever in coming to our campus and talking about Greek ministry and how to reach Greeks?" And I just remember feeling very excited all of a sudden. And God used that excitement to kind of start stirring in me a little of that vision, maybe that you're talking about, and really just kind of thinking wait, is staff maybe something that you have for me, God? And so he really used that invitation from that undergrad staff. I never even ended up going to that campus. Like I said, I don't even remember who it was, but God used that question, that invitation to really stir something up in me. And that was, like I said, the beginning of that summer between my junior and senior year. So I just spent the rest of that summer really praying and asking God if this was something that he had for me in my future.
And I mean, it would seem that the answer to that prayer ended up being yes, that this is where I'm taking you. What did that process look like for you? The transition from like very little vision to like, wait, hold on a second, to a summer of prayer, and like what was happening in that space for you?
Yeah. I mean, remember too, I was still pretty new Christian, just been walking with Jesus for a couple of years. And I always I truly believe that God in his kindness meets us right where we are in whatever stage of maturity we're at. And I had just been praying all summer long. I had been doing an internship at a different city that summer. So I was attending a church that wasn't really, the church I had grown up in or anything. And I remember coming towards the end of that summer, and I didn't really feel like I had gotten my answer yet. And for whatever reason, right before going to church this one Sunday morning, I just prayed very specifically, God, would you show me this morning if you want me to come on staff with INTERVARSITY or not?
Wow.
And I don't know what possessed me to be that specific. Like I said, God in his kindness, he meets us where we are. And that summer, the pastor had been teaching through the book of Acts. And at the end of his sermon, he said, I've run out of time. I only have time to give one of my application points, but that application is, how do I know if God wants me to go into ministry or not?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I was like on high alert at that moment. I felt like the spotlight had been like on me, and I was like, he's talking to me. This is God speaking to me. But I continued to just listen to everything he said about how do I know? And everything that he said just felt like complete peace and confirmation from God that, yes, this is what I have for you. You can rest assured and walk in that assurance that this is the next step I have for you.
Man, that is amazing. There are times in my life when I feel uncomfortable sort of making those requests to God of like, okay, today, because I think in general, I want to work on God's timeline.
Yep.
But it is interesting, those spaces that sometimes we just step in and say, God, what about today? Could today be the day that I get an answer for this thing that I've been seeking after? And I wonder how often God really is just waiting for us to be like, would you just like you would ask your parent for, can I have a little extra cash to go to the movies with my friends or something like that?
I've been asking all summer, maybe today, can I have it? Could you give me an answer today? Yes.
It is amazing that sort of the persistent, those prayers of persistence and still having like expectancy, even if it's not expectation necessarily. And saying like, man, God, I believe that maybe today could be the day. And then there it is that if anything, maybe it was the Lord prompting you to pray that prayer just so that you would be aware for when the time came along.
Yes. Yeah. Because in those moments in the future, then when I would maybe doubt, it was so much easier to go back and remember, no, this was a very clear yes from the Lord.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you bring that up because I feel like I keep being reminded in this season remembering God's faithfulness in the past when we're in dry seasons and saying like, I know I've heard God's voice. He has led me before. I feel like I'm not getting any direction right now, but I trust that he will lead me again or is leading me in ways that I just don't recognize right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't forget to remember.
Yes, absolutely. Don't forget to remember. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Let me jump in briefly and connect just a few dots here. At this point in her story, Kristen joins staff with INTERVARSITY on a mostly part-time basis as she and her husband start building a family together. At the end of 12 years, she wraps up her time on staff to focus more fully on her family and also to explore a few different part-time job opportunities. Fast forward then all the way to 2023, the Greek INTERVARSITY chapter at IU is without a campus staff and is just not doing well at the time. And Kristen and her husband are asked if they would be interested in volunteering with the chapter. They, of course, say yes, and over the course of the next year and a half, they work hard at regrowing a healthy chapter and very quickly start seeing significant growth throughout the Greek ministry at IU. Kristen also returns to staff at this time. One of the events that they start hosting on campus is a monthly all-Greek gathering, and each event is so well attended that it's standing room only. Kristen is about to tell us about the moment leading up to the April all-Greek gathering where we see this major movement of the Spirit among everybody who's there. But first, what's a good story without a little bit of drama? So let's jump back in right here. And the April gathering that's the one that brings us to the story that's brought us all together here.
Yeah.
And we're about to tell that story in more depth here. Everybody's just like, I feel I continue like leaning over the top of my microphone as you're sharing this. If people are watching on YouTube, they can see me slowly like getting closer to the screen, and then I have to sit back because I'm just like, oh my gosh, here we go. We're getting closer. Before you tell that story, though, let's just introduce one moment of drama here, because I know that there's something that just like goes wrong right before this April gathering. Tell us that story, and then we'll get to the moment that we've been waiting for.
Oh, yes. It wouldn't be complete without that moment of drama.
Exactly.
So just to let you know, the February All Greek gathering, we had no idea what to expect. It was our first one. We were meeting in a sorority house, and, we're kind of asking, what's your capacity to hold us? And our All Greek gathering coordinator, Abby, she had said, how many people are you expecting? And I was like, 75, maybe 100. And my husband was like, that's probably a little much. But, we were trying to figure out like space. And 110 students showed up. Like literally, we were sitting on the stairs that go down into the living room of the sorority house. And guys were bringing in dining room chairs from the next room to have more seating. So when we got to the March All Greek gathering, we set up 100 chairs. 180 students showed up.
What?
Yeah. So these All Greek gatherings, like you said, they had been just growing like crazy. So Paul was the one. Andy and Paul and I had been sharing the teaching at these All Greeks, and so Paul was up in April for our April All Greek gathering.
Okay.
And he had said to me, Kristen, I just have this sense that the students need to hear the gospel and have a chance to respond to it. And I was like, you are absolutely right. Like of all of the these 180, what would we say? Like there's probably at least 50 of them that aren't really followers of Jesus. So let's give them an opportunity. Yeah. So we shared that with our leadership team. We shared that with our chapter ministry leaders. We kind of advertised it as such, like, hey, we'd been teaching them how to share their faith, but here's an easy way. You can just bring your brothers and sisters, and Paul will do it for you. Yeah. And we had response cards made up where we just agonized over the wording of how we were going to do that, because it seems like those moments where you make an invitation to follow Jesus for whatever reason, there's just so much confusion that seems to pop up. So we agonized over the wording. And so back to then the drama. We were meeting at a sorority. I have two social media girls who are phenomenal.
Nice.
We'd already advertised it on our social media where we were going to have it. These gatherings happen the first Tuesday of every month, and the Monday before, the leader of the sorority that's supposed to host us calls me in just tears, so upset. And I was like, what's wrong? I could barely understand her. And she said, the house board told us we can't meet here because we're too big and we're a fire hazard.
Wow. And
I was like, okay, that's all right. There's 50 other chapters. We'll find one. Don't worry, just trying to put her at ease. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, at this late stage, we need a fraternity because they don't have quite the stringent rules that the sororities do. And it's not even quite 9 o'clock in the morning yet. So I text our Fiji leader, Nick, miracle that he's even awake before 9 a.m. And I'm like, Nick, how would you like to host 180 Greek students at Fiji tomorrow? And he's like, check in with my chapter president now. I'll get right back to you. And within a half an hour, we had a new location. Our social media girls had made a new graphic. And what that did was it actually served to only fire our leaders up more, because they really felt like this was kind of an enemy ploy. Like he knew what was going to happen. And so all it did was just serve to make more invites. And the girl who was told that she couldn't host, her sorority sisters rallied around her, and she brought 14 girls to that gathering in April at Fiji. And so it was one of, and I even had said to Nick, I was like, hey, do you have enough chairs for us? We're going to take the tables out. We've learned enough. And he's like, yeah, we got plenty of chairs. We set up 130 chairs. And I was like, where's the rest of the chairs? And he's like, I don't know what happens. Like it's a fraternity house. So, so once again, we got standing room only because 190 students showed up to this April All Greek gathering. They're standing, they're sitting on tables. Yeah. So there was the drama for you.
That's amazing. I love that. And just the fact that there was not a loss of spirit, so that it was
it was only served to fire it up. Yeah.
Let's dig in and make this happen. Okay. So then here we are, 190 students are showing up to this secondary space that they only found out about, 36 hours before it's going to happen.
Yep.
And, so, all right. What is it that happens at this event? I just take us through the story that we've been waiting for.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, it's hard to describe or measure a move of God, right? And so I'll just do my best. Paul had decided that he was going to teach from Ecclesiastes 2. Which is,
interesting.
Yeah, I know, but it's Solomon basically could have been an IU Greek if he would have lived in our time. Here he is chasing success, chasing women, chasing food and pleasure and all the things that our Greek students also chase after for satisfaction and pleasure. And we really titled Talk the Search for Satisfaction. And he talked about Jesus as our bread of life and our living water, the one true thing that will never disappoint, that will be the only thing that truly satisfies. And he gave an invitation for anyone who had never made a decision before in their life to follow Jesus. And he made it pretty clear, and he also didn't make it easy. We didn't try and tug on people's emotions too much or be manipulative.
Sure. Yeah.
He talked about the cost, and he said, you don't even have to fill out this card. It's just there for you if you want to make a decision tonight and kind of draw a line in the sand. And we asked for their names and their phone numbers on this card too. And so that's what it didn't feel like this big, angels singing moment or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then we had great student leaders who just went around and they gathered the cards. And like we've done at all of our other All Greek gatherings, we had a student testimony, and he was phenomenal. Tate, he shared about his own searching in all the wrong places until he finally found true satisfaction in Jesus. And then we did 2 chapter ministry leader spotlights. And at the end, the leaders gave me all the cards, and students are leaving, and we're packing up and putting the room back in order. And I'm holding these 190 cards and thinking to myself, I just wondered if anyone even checked this box,
Wow.
And
okay.
So yeah. So
in the moment as it's happening, it didn't even seem like some big okay. I see here. I have not heard the ins and outs of the story, and here I thought it was in the space you just see this massive response.
No.
You have a very quiet moment that happens here.
Yeah, we had, like I said, we had kind of agonized over how to do it. Should we have students stand up? Do you have them close their eyes and raise their hands? But like I said, we just really wanted it to be a moment where they could do something in private quietly, but then give us their name and number so that we could follow up with them.
Yeah.
In hindsight, maybe I would go back and do some things differently or word something differently. I don't know. Like I said, it's just hard to know. But I started to take a look at those cards, just peeking at them as Paul is like packing up his sound equipment. And the first 3 I look at had all checked that first box. And I was like, oh my gosh, they responded, Paul. And he was like, okay, well, when you get home, will you just let me know as soon as possible? So yeah, I Zoomed home. It's like, I don't live there on campus, so I commute. So it was those cards were kind of burning a hole in my bag.
Absolutely.
And Andy had been there. So I was like, all right, I want you to count these cards. And then I always like to go through and count like who all was there at the All Greek gatherings. And so he just starts counting them, and he looks up and he says, 111 students checked the box that they wanted to follow Jesus and trust him as their Lord and Savior.
My goodness.
And I was like, are you kidding me? So that led us to, we have a chapter ministry leader group me that I just love, because since they've gotten to know each other, they feel like a family, and they were like, how many check the box to follow Jesus? Like, they were so excited to know. And,
that's awesome.
And so I was able to report to them, and they were like, what? I was thinking this is one of those things that Paul and Andy and I would be able to follow up with everyone who checked that box. But I was pretty off base with that.
Yeah, this is, I mean, you talk about like a nets breaking situation. You have been experiencing like net after net being broken over the course of these last couple of semesters. And this moment is another one of those. And I know, like this creates logistical challenges for you all, which, that'd be a whole nother story in and of itself, talking about how did you do this? How did you follow up with these people as best as you could? I don't think we'll go there necessarily for our time here, but I wonder, like, I'll just say it outright, like having been in chapter ministry as well on campus, like, that there's a certain amount of nuance, and you've asked this question already of like, what do people mean? Like, what's going on in their heads when they're checking yes in this box? Like, what did that actually mean for them?
Yep.
And that we trust that they have been met by the Spirit of God, and that he is moving them towards himself one way or another, but that maybe not every yes meant the same thing necessarily to somebody, but that they were saying yes to something in that space. So knowing that that's the reality of like, okay, 111 people responded, how many people are in the process of like full life transformation here? Like, can you just give us some stories about what is the fruit that you've been seeing? Knowing that so much of it is actually really hard to measure in truth and in reality.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you a couple of just quick stories. So 2 of the guys who did check that they wanted to receive and follow Jesus were 2 of our guys who had just recently kind of come out of nowhere. It was one of our red houses, and they had heard about Greek IV through friends, and they wanted to start a Bible study in their fraternity house. Like, this is where things started going in the spring, John. I was like getting random texts from people I didn't know who were like, we want to start a Bible study. And I'm like, great, do you want to talk with me and meet with me first? And I can tell you about Greek IV. So these 2 guys had wanted to start a Bible study. And when I met with them, I was like, I'm not sure that you're even a Christian. But that's all right. Listen, just open up the scriptures, discuss what you see about Jesus. That's totally fine to do. And then I handed them over to Andy, because Andy and Paul kind of split the discipleship of our men leaders. Okay. And then I disciple all the women leaders. And so I said, Andy, these 2 guys are starting a Bible study in their fraternity. I'm not sure they're following Jesus or not, but you can discuss that with them. So they checked that box, and so it just gave Andy the opportunity when he met with them the next week to say, hey, we had a great night, at Fiji last week, and you guys tell me about this. And long story short, in that moment, he got to pray with both of them to receive Christ, and they were fired up afterwards. And one of them is coming to summer retreat next week, and I just was so. And then another quick story. we had so many students that came to know Jesus through their chapter ministry this year, which was phenomenal. One of those, but actually there's one girl and one guy that I'm thinking of in particular. I loved that on their response card, they wrote, "I've already made this decision," or "I'm already following Jesus." Yeah. And to just see that assurance that they have and be able to kind of voice that and know where they stand with him was those were just a couple of stories that really warmed my heart. And at the end of the year, we had to turn in our annual field report by April 30th. We ended up reporting 67 decisions for Jesus after all of our follow-up. But even after I turned that AFR in, John, I had two guys say, "Oh, hey, we need to add somebody else. I just had coffee with somebody else this morning who said they want to recommit their life to Jesus." So, I mean, it's just continuing. The fruit is just continuing to be born.
Yes. Wow. I love that so much, Kristen. And I'm thinking back even to, when you were a student, that even then, God knew. He knew it was going to be happening in April of this year. And he's like, "Kristen, you have no clue what I am inviting you to do. You have no idea. But it's coming. Will you say yes now? Because down the road, holy cow, you're going to be so psyched that you said yes." Yeah.
Gosh, I'm kind of glad that he doesn't give us that whole big picture at the beginning. But man, is that just really incredible to think about.
Alumni, imagine what fruit is yet to be born from the yeses that you've given God. Maybe you've gotten to experience some of it already, or maybe you're still waiting, and maybe it feels like you've been waiting for quite some time. Just remember that God's faithfulness stretches much farther than we can imagine, and that his timing just might be different from yours. But he will show up. You can count on it. Maybe it won't look like 100 people saying yes to Jesus all at once, but you can be certain that it will take a form that brings glory to God and that provides for your needs. Kristen, thank you again for sharing your amazing story. Alumni, don't forget that there's a link to the full version in the show notes, and there are a few amazing details that we didn't have time to cover today. Go give it a listen for even more encouragement for your own post-graduation journey. Then be sure to come back next week for another Focus Ministry conversation with Matthew Best, a BCM alum who is now the Executive Director of New Ballet Ensemble and School in Memphis, Tennessee. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Santera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.